I want to describe a man who does not think of himself as lazy and would be genuinely offended if you called him that. Because on paper, he's one of the most ambitious men you know. He can talk for an hour about the business he's going to build. He has a name for it. He has thought about the logo. He has read every book that matters on the subject, followed every account that talks about it, saved dozens of posts he needs to go back and study properly. Ask him what he wants out of the next 5 years, and he will give you a vivid, detailed, genuinely inspiring answer. Ask him what he actually did this month to move toward it, and the room gets quiet. That is not a man without ambition. This is a man with an enormous amount of it, running constantly, loudly, in his head, that has simply never once been paired with his hands. And scripture has a name for exactly this man. It is not a modern invention. Proverbs named him 3,000 years ago. Proverbs 13, verse 4. The craving of a sluggard is never satisfied. The desire of the diligent is fully satisfied. Notice the sluggard in this verse is not a man without desire. He craves. The word itself implies appetite, hunger, wanting something badly. The problem was never the size of his want. The problem is that the craving runs completely disconnected from any labor attached to it, which means it stays forever unsatisfied, no matter how large or how sincere it grows. Proverbs 21 sharpens this until it actually stings. The desire of the slothful kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but uh, the righteous gives and does not spare. All day long. This is not a man with a small occasional wish. This is a man whose appetite is running on repeat all day, every day, and his hands still refuse to move. That gap, sustained long enough, the proverb says, is what kills him. Not the absence of ambition, presence of it entirely unpaired from work. I want to sit with that word. I want to sit with that word kills for a second because it is stronger than most translations of Proverbs get, and it is not there by accident. This is not describing a mild inconvenience or a slightly underachieved life. It is describing a slow death, a specific kind that comes from spending years wanting something with real intensity and never once closing the gap between the wanting and doing. Man can survive failure. Failure at least teaches you something and gives you a next move. What this verse describes is worse than failure. It is a craving that never even gets tested, running in the same loop for years, consuming the man from the inside while producing nothing on the outside for anyone to see or correct. Here is what makes this particular man so hard to spot, including for himself. His laziness rarely looks like laziness, it looks like productivity. He's not lying on a couch doing nothing. He is researching, he is planning, he is refining the pitch deck for the fifth time, restructuring his business plan, watching one more video on how to actually get started, reading one more book before he feels ready. Every single hour of it feels like forward motion because thinking about the goal produces some of the same emotional reward as actually working toward it without any of the risk, discomfort, or possibility of failure that real labor carries. Proverbs 14, verse 23. It draws the line between two with almost no room for interpretation. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Not most talk, mere talk. Talk on its own, disconnected from labor, however sincere or well informed that talk happens to be. You can talk about the business you're building with total conviction, in complete detail, for years, and the proverb is unambiguous about where that road ends if the hard work never joins it. If the hard work never joins. And notice what this means practically. The planning itself is not the problem. Planning that leads into labor is wisdom. Planning that replaces labor, that becomes a permanent, comfortable substitute for actually for the actual risk of starting. It is sluggards craving wearing a business casual disguise. Proverbs 20 verse 4 shows you the other favorite hiding place for this same person, waiting for the right conditions. Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time, they look but find nothing. The sluggard here is not refusing to farm outright, he's waiting. The weather is not quite right, timing is not quite ideal. We will start plowing once the conditions improve, and by the time the harvest comes, there is nothing in the ground because the season for planning has already passed while he was waiting for it to feel more confident. I want to be careful here because I'm not telling you all planning is avoidance and all patience is laziness. I'm telling you there is a specific common disguise where waiting for ideal conditions becomes a permanent, respectable sounding excuse for never actually planning. And most ambitious men who are stuck have been standing at the edge of that field for longer than they'd like to admit. Now I want to go one layer deeper because there is a reason this man does not see himself clearly, and it's not stupidity. There's a specific kind of self deception James names directly. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. James was writing about hearing scripture without acting on it. The mechanism he describes is exactly what happens to the ambitious but lazy man every time he consumes another book, another podcast, another video about life, another video about the life he wants to build. He looks in the mirror, he sees vividly what he could be, and then he closes the app, walks away. By the next morning, the reflection has faded completely, replaced by whatever new content he consumes next, never once translated into a changed hand, a changed heart, a changed twist. Here is the identity trap under all of this, and it is the most dangerous part of the whole pattern. Somewhere along the way, this man started calling himself an entrepreneur, builder, an ambitious man, and the label itself began doing the work his hands were supposed to do. He believes the story he tells about himself more than he examines what he actually produced. Identity became the substitute for the evidence, and as long as he keeps saying the word ambitious about himself, some part of him feels like that's the same thing as being it. It is not the same thing. Jesus told a short, sharp parable about exactly this gap between claimed identity and actual action, and it does not leave any room for the label to count on its own. Matthew 21. A man had two sons. He asked the first to go walk in the vineyard. I will not, the son said, but later changed his mind and went. He asked the second son the same thing. I will, sir, son answered, and did not go. Which one did what the father actually wanted? The first, the one whose words said no and whose hands said yes, not the one whose words sounded obedient and whose hands never moved. You talk about the empire you're going to build, however detailed, however sincere, however many people have heard you describe it, counts for exactly as much as the second son's yes. Which is to say, on its own, it counts for nothing at all. I think part of the I think part of why this trap is so comfortable is that talking about the vision gets you real, immediate social reward. People nod. Then they tell you then they tell you it sounds exciting. Some of them tell you that you're inspiring, that they wish they had your drive, and every one of those reactions land exactly like validation, even though nothing has actually been built yet. The applause arrives before the labor does, and once a man has tasted that applause, the labor starts to feel almost optional because he has already collected the emotional reward the labor was supposed to earn. So let's make this practical. Because I do not want to leave you simply feeling exposed. I want to leave you with a filter you can actually use starting today. Here is the question. Before you spend another hour on the thing you've been calling preparation, ask yourself plainly, does this task produce something that did not exist before I did it? Or does it just make me feel closer to starting? Finish first draft of the outreach email did not exist before you wrote it. That is labor. Watching a fourth video on how to write outreach emails produces nothing new at all. That is the craving, dressed up as diligence. Run everything you have labeled as ambition through that filter this week. The research that never turns into a decision. The plan that gets revised for the sixth time instead of tested once. The course you bought and have not finished, sitting next to three others you have also not finished. None of it is evil. All of it feels productive. Almost none of it on its own is labor. And Proverbs already told you what mere talk, however well informed, produces on its own. Then pick one task you have been planning the longest and do the smallest real version of it today. Not another hour of research on it. Actual first rep, email sent, not drafted and reread for the 10th time. The product listed, not perfected in private for another month. Call made, not scripted one more time. Small, real, and finished beats large. Imagine and endless every single time because only one of these two things is actually labor in the proverb sense. I know what I'm asking you to give up, and I want to name it plainly instead of letting you walk away from this still comfortable. It is asking you to give up the identity of the guy who is about to start, a version of you that gets to feel ambitious without ever being measured against a finished thing, and trade it for the much less flattering, much more honest position of a guy with one small, unremarkable rep completed today. That trade will not feel like an upgrade in the moment. It will feel smaller than the vision you've been carrying around in your head for years. It is not smaller. It is the only version of the vision that has actually ever counted. Craving was never the problem. You are allowed to want something badly. You are allowed to think big, plan carefully, dream in detail. But a craving that never once reaches your hands is not ambition. Proverbs already told you exactly what it is and what it produces, no matter how many years you let it run. So today, before you consume one more piece of content about the life you want, do one small real thing instead. Let your hands catch up to your appetite. That is the whole episode, and it is the only part of it that will actually change anything. This is Built Not Felt by the Rice Board. I'll see you all in the next episode.